Tell me something. Have you ever been invited somewhere only to realize you were never meant to be seen? Because that's exactly what happened to me. The only empty seat at my sister's wedding was hidden behind a pillar. Not just any pillar, a massive white column wrapped in flowers, positioned perfectly so that from the main hall, you couldn't see behind it at all. And from where I sat, I could barely see the altar. I remember standing there, staring at the seating chart, scanning it again and again, like maybe I'd missed something. Names everywhere, couples, families, even distant relatives I hadn't seen in years. But mine? Not there. Amara, the wedding coordinator said, her smile tight, almost apologetic, right this way. That was my first clue something wasn't right. She didn't lead me to a table. She led me behind the pillar. One single chair. No table setting, no place card, just a chair. Hidden. I actually laughed at first, quiet, disbelieving, because what else do you do when something is so humiliating it doesn't feel real? I turned instinctively, scanning the room. That's when I saw her. Lydia, my older sister, the bride, standing at the front in her perfect white dress, glowing under soft lights, surrounded by bridesmaids adjusting her veil like she was royalty. And she was smiling. Not the kind of smile you give guests. No, this one was different. Small, sharp, intentional. She caught my eye from across the room and, without even moving her lips much, mouthed 5 words I'll never forget. It's better this way. Better? For who? My stomach dropped, because suddenly it all made sense. The years of subtle comments, the way she'd forget to include me in things, the way every achievement I had somehow turned into something small next to hers. But this wasn't subtle. This was public, deliberate, calculated. And the worst part? No one said anything. My parents were busy greeting guests. People were laughing, taking photos, sipping champagne, like everything was perfect. Like I didn't exist. I slowly sat down, the edge of the chair cold beneath me, gripping the gift I had spent weeks preparing. You know what hurts the most? Not being hated, being erased. I stared at that gift in my hands, and something inside me shifted. Because in that moment, I realized something very clearly. I wasn't supposed to stay. So I stood up, slowly, quietly, but just as I turned toward the exit, someone called my name, and everything changed. Amara, wait. That one word stopped me mid-step. I turned slowly, already bracing myself, but it wasn't who I expected. It wasn't Lydia. It was Daniel, the groom. Standing there in his tailored suit, looking completely out of place near the entrance, like he had no idea he wasn't supposed to be there yet. His expression wasn't annoyed, it wasn't defensive. It was confused. "Are you leaving?" he asked, his voice low, careful. Now let me ask you something. What would you have done in that moment? Because I had 2 choices. Smile, lie, pretend everything was fine, or tell the truth and risk blowing everything up. "I think I'm not meant to be here," I said finally. Simple, calm, but it landed. Daniel frowned immediately. "What do you mean? Of course you're meant to be here. You're Lydia's sister." Exactly. So why was I sitting behind a pillar like a secret? I glanced past him, back into the room. From the doorway, everything looked picture perfect. Guests chatting, music playing softly, no sign of the quiet humiliation happening just a few feet away. "Did you see where they put me?" I asked. He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "No," he admitted, "I didn't handle the seating." Of course he didn't. And just like that, the first crack appeared. Because if this had been intentional, and deep down I already knew it was, then Lydia had done this without telling him. Why? Before I could say anything else, a wedding planner rushed over, leaning in close to Daniel and whispering something urgent in his ear. I watched his face change. Confusion to discomfort. Then something else. Concern. He looked at me again, differently this time, like there was something he wasn't sure how to say. "Can you just wait here a second?" he asked. Wait? For what? I nodded anyway, even though every instinct in me was screaming to walk out that door and never look back. But then I noticed something. People were looking at me. Not in sympathy. In curiosity. Two women whispered to each other, glancing in my direction. A man at a nearby table shook his head slightly, like he already knew something I didn't. And that's when the feeling hit me. Not just excluded, but judged, like a story about me had already been told. My grip tightened around the gift in my hands. Something wasn't right. Not just with the seat, with everything. And then I saw her again. Lydia. Walking towards us now, her expression soft and composed, but her eyes cold, sharp, warning. She slipped her arm through Daniel like nothing was wrong and smiled sweetly. "Everything okay here?" Then she looked straight at me and said, just loud enough for the people nearby to hear, "I just hope you're not planning to ruin this day too." Two? I felt my chest tighten. What did she just say? What did she tell them? Ruin it again? That word echoed in my head like a warning siren. Again? I hadn't even done anything. So what exactly was she talking about? I looked around, and this time I really saw it. The glances, the whispers, the subtle shifts in people's expressions. This wasn't random curiosity. This was expectation. Like they were all waiting for me to prove something they already believed. "Lydia, what are you saying?" I asked, my voice quieter now but sharper. She let out a soft sigh, tilting her head like she was exhausted, like I was the problem. "Please, Amara, not here," she said gently. And just like that, she flipped the script. Now it looked like I was the one pushing for drama. Clever. Too clever. Daniel frowned beside her. "Not here what? Lydia, what does she mean again?" There it was. The question Lydia didn't want to answer. She hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. Enough for doubt to slip into the room. Then she did what she always does. She performed. "She's just..." Lydia paused, pressing her lips together like she was choosing her words carefully. "Amara has a history of making things about herself. I just didn't want any surprises today." And there it was. The narrative. Clean, simple, damaging. A few people nodded subtly. Someone in the back whispered, "I heard something like that too." My stomach dropped. So this wasn't just about a chair. This was a setup. A full one. The hidden seat, the whispers, the timing. She didn't just want me out of sight. She wanted me discredited. "Wow," I said under my breath, more to myself than anyone else. Lydia squeezed Daniel's arm slightly, like she needed control of the moment. "I just wanted a peaceful day," she added softly. "That's all." Peaceful. By turning me into the villain? I looked at Daniel. His expression had changed. Not fully convinced, but shaken. Conflicted. Good, because that meant he wasn't completely blind. "What exactly did you tell people?" I asked Lydia, my voice steady now. She didn't answer. That silence said more than anything else could. And then it hit me. The texts. The calls. 3 weeks ago, Lydia had reached out to me, out of nowhere, asking about the gift, being unusually warm, even sentimental. She told me it meant everything to her. So why was she acting like I didn't belong here? Unless unless she never planned for me to belong. A slow, cold realization settled in my chest. This wasn't last minute. This was planned. Every piece of it. I looked down at the gift in my hands, then back at her, and suddenly, something inside me snapped into place. "Funny," I said, lifting it slightly. Her eyes flickered. Because she knew. "Oh yeah," I continued, louder now, just enough for the nearby guests to hear. "You definitely didn't want surprises." I took a step forward. But maybe it's time people understand why. The room went still. And for the first time, Lydia looked nervous. The moment I opened that gift, everything changed. I placed it carefully on a nearby table, my hands steady now, though my heart pounded in my chest. Guests began to lean in. Even the music seemed to pause, leaving an eerie quiet over the hall. All eyes were on me, and yes, on Lydia, too. Her smile had vanished. Now there was tension there, controlled but thinly veiled. She had always been the queen of composure, but this was different. I began, keeping my voice calm but deliberate. 3 weeks ago, Lydia asked me for something specific, said it was important for the wedding, that it would mean everything. Daniel's eyes widened. She asked you for something?" he murmured. "Yes," I said, slowly unwrapping the carefully wrapped gift. Everyone leaned closer. The bridesmaids stopped chatting, a couple of curious guests craned their necks, even Lydia's parents shifted uncomfortably. Inside the box was a framed childhood photo, the two of us on a summer day, smiling, holding ice cream cones. Nostalgia hit the room, but I wasn't done. Nestled with the photo was a handwritten letter, every word carefully crafted, every memory captured, the shared moments only we knew, moments Lydia herself had told me mattered. I looked at her now, and the cracks in her armor were visible. Her eyes flicked to Daniel, then back to me. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The narrative she had spun, me as the problem, was now collapsing under the weight of the evidence. I spoke steadily, layering the truth. "You asked me for this. You said it was important. You wanted it to be part of your day. Yet you hid me behind a pillar? You told people I'd ruin your wedding if I stayed visible? You painted me as dramatic, unstable, someone who could not be trusted. Do you understand what that makes you?" The room was silent. Even the wedding planner seemed frozen. I continued. "This isn't the first time. It's a pattern. Years of subtle sabotage, manipulation, being erased while everyone thinks I'm the one at fault." Daniel's face darkened with shock. He stepped back from Lydia. I didn't know," he said, voice tight. "None of this was true, was it?" Lydia tried to speak, stammered, tried to regain control, but the room no longer listened to her. Guests were whispering, questioning. Her credibility, carefully built over decades, was unraveling in real time. I placed the photo and letter back on the table, not as a gift anymore, but as proof, as a statement. "I'm done staying silent," I said, finally, my voice ringing through the hall. "I'm done shrinking, and I'm done being erased." I turned towards the exit. This time, no one stopped me. I walked out with my head high, feeling a freedom I hadn't felt in years. Outside the hall, Daniel approached me later, quiet, apologetic, grateful. Lydia's parents and even some guests were left to process the fallout. And in that moment, I felt it. Relief, closure, validation. I hadn't ruined a wedding. I had preserved my dignity. I had chosen myself. Because sometimes being hidden behind a pillar isn't the end. Sometimes it's the beginning. They tried to hide me behind a pillar, but in the end, they couldn't hide the truth. By the time I stepped outside the hall, the air felt different, like I'd finally exhaled years of tension I hadn't even realized I'd been holding. Inside, the wedding had ground to a halt. Guests were murmuring, glancing between Lydia and Daniel, whispering behind hands and holding phones up to record, while the bridal party fumbled awkwardly, unsure how to salvage the moment. And Lydia? She was standing frozen, her perfect composure shattered, realizing for the first time that her carefully constructed image had been stripped bare in front of everyone. The truth was simple, but damning. Lydia had orchestrated my invisibility. The hidden seat, the whispers, the accusations of me being dramatic, they were all deliberate. She wanted to isolate me, to humiliate me publicly, to make everyone believe I was the problem. She had done it before in subtle ways, forgotten birthdays, ignored achievements, but this was on a stage, and I finally gave it back to her fully and unflinchingly. I hadn't gone in expecting justice. I had only wanted to be seen, to be acknowledged. And yet, in exposing the truth with the photo and the letter, I not only reclaimed my presence, but also forced her lies into the light. Daniel, the groom, stood silently by, visibly shaken. He realized he had been misled, that the woman he was about to marry was not the person she presented herself as, at least in her treatment of me. That realization had consequences. The ceremony halted, the planner began quietly redirecting guests, and even Lydia's parents seemed caught between defending her and recognizing the truth. Emotionally, the release was immense. I felt a weight lift from my chest, relief, validation, and a kind of quiet triumph. I had stood up for myself in front of everyone who mattered. I had refused to let the narrative of invisibility define me any longer. For the first time in years, I felt in control. Socially and personally, consequences rippled outward. Lydia's credibility fractured. Guests who once whispered behind her back now saw the truth. Daniel distanced himself, protecting himself from further manipulation. And I walked away with my dignity intact, my relationships recalibrated, and a sense of closure I'd long craved. Finally, I paused outside the hall. I held the gift, the symbol of our shared past, now a testament to my resilience, and smiled faintly, letting the night air wash over me. I wasn't just the sister who was hidden behind a pillar. I was the one who refused to be erased. And in that moment, everything shifted. The story had ended, not with humiliation, but with justice, clarity, and peace. The chapter of invisibility was over. The chapter of truth had begun.